the 21st century, and most countries allow freedom and opportunity for all races and sexes to achieve any goal they set out for themselves. We see this as women have taken up senior roles within large corporations. But we still have a long way to go, and one summit that has shed some light on how we can is the African Women's Leadership Summit that took place in Kenya last week. Joining us in studio today is international speaker Elizabeth Ngonzi, who spoke at the summit. Ngonzi is also the CEO of a non-profit organization, Afrika Tikkun, in the USA. This organization invests in the development of disadvantaged children from early infancy through young adulthood and into the world of work. Elizabeth, thank you so much. You're here from the US. Welcome to South Africa.
Thank you so much. I just want to clarify that the summit actually took place in Wanderers Club in Lovo last week. No problem. That's okay.
So sorry about that.
But thank you for having me.
Nonetheless, we're happy it took place, and we're happy there is this focus on women's roles in leadership and so on. If we can just start with, I think, one of the most important questions, and we even touched on it a bit earlier in the previous interview, this huge type of inequality that we see, you know, that still in 2015 persists, statistics showing that we don't have enough women in leadership roles. What is the summit saying about specifically that?
Sure. So what was exciting about our summit is that we had a number of really great speakers, leaders, including Judy Nokedi, who I'm sure many people know from Tourvest. And then we decided to have two men, one of whom is Ravi Naidu, who was the executive director for economic development and tourism at the City of Johannesburg, and the chairman of McCann, South Africa. And they said two things I thought were really, really important, and I think it's important for us to hear from men. They said, as women, if you really want to have a place at the table, you need to have to figure out how to get get into the inner circle. And one of the ways of doing so is finding mentors and finding sponsors who can advocate for you on your behalf. And so for me, I've had a mentor for the last 20 years, a gentleman by the name of Tom Padula. He's an 80-year-old Greek-American man. We look nothing alike. We have nothing really in common, but he's the person who I go to when I'm trying to figure out what to do with my career. He's the person I go to who can advocate on my behalf when I need, you know, sort of an inner person perspective, or someone to say, Liz is okay, let's bring her in to do this and the other. So women definitely need that. While I think it's really important for us to have other women as mentors, we also need to find those people who are in the inner circle, who have those conversations and are really at the tables where we aren't.
Yes. Then looking at the summit, also specifically focusing on African leadership, what is it that we see across the continent in terms of women in leadership roles? So, I
mean, the good thing is we're seeing more women, and I have this study from DWA, I don't know which way is showing it, but which I just got last week, and this focuses specifically on South Africa, but what we're finding is here we are on a continent where we have African women who are leaders of countries, right?
Yes.
We also lead in terms of the number of women parliamentarians. So we actually do have women leaders. And if you look at the percentage of women who sit on boards in South Africa, it's actually greater than in the US. So yeah, it is.
Wow,
that's actually from a Grant Thornton study.
Are we talking from a private sector? Or
that's private sector. Private sector, absolutely. I have a study, I used it for an event I spoke in. But what we're finding is that women are finding their voices, they're finding their places, and they're working together. And I think that if we're able to kind of see what our commonalities are and work together and see that we're not women in Uganda, women in South Africa and Kenya, that we actually have this Pan-African sort of opportunity to work together and share best practices, I think we really can go very far. The other thing I think is really important is that technology is enabling us to have a much greater impact and for our voices to be heard and for us to collaborate more effectively. And I think that I really am very excited about what technology is doing to facilitate more women in leadership. But of course, we still have a really long way to go. But I think it's really imperative that those of us women leaders who have platforms, who are in positions to help bring others along with us, really do need to take that as responsibility and to share opportunities with those who are younger or who are less senior than us.
Elizabeth, you spoke about women finding their voices. Just tell us, at the summit, some of the speakers, what is the advice that they gave to women, specifically in business? Because sometimes we do have this idea that we need to be a kind of a pit bull figure, or we need to know how to balance a leadership role with this type of motherly side that we have. What is the advice that they give to women who really want to make it big within the corporate world?
Well, first of all, it's let your voice be heard, right? And I think that this is a case we see across the world. And in fact, Harvard Business School studied this. What they found was that they had a group of women who'd come through their program. And these are women who obviously by the time they get to Harvard Business School are pretty rock stars. And they found that they lagged their male counterparts significantly in terms of participation, raising their hands, and that accounted for 50% of their grade. And despite that, they didn't raise their hands. So if you're thinking women who are already so accomplished, right, and are seen to be aggressive, can't even do that, imagine the rest of us. And so one of the things that came out of the conversation in our summit was the importance of us raising our hands, letting our voices be heard, and really feeling comfortable to step up. So in a meeting, don't just sit there and wait for everybody else to speak. In a meeting, let your ideas be heard. Make sure that you share your ideas with your leadership. I have to tell you, Judy Nokedi was great about sharing that, and she's someone who's definitely had a very, very successful career, and it's because she's willing to be aggressive and share what she knows. I mean, of course, you have to temper that, right? I mean, because you also have to understand the environment you're in. But certainly, I think it makes sense for us to have our voice heard. But we shouldn't forget the fact that we are women. I know that sounds controversial, but when I was starting out my career in the early 90s, the women who are in leadership had to really look like men. They had to sort of comport themselves the way that men do. And I feel that we don't necessarily have to do so anymore, and we've seen that. And so you can still be feminine, and you can still be a mother. You can still, balance everything that's going on in your life, but definitely bring the best that you can to your job.
Elizabeth, just to quickly end off on, just tell us about your organization, how they're helping young women. And you mentioned that you'll be in Limpopo tomorrow? That's
correct. So Afrika Tikkun is an amazing organization. It's been around for 20 years. I've been with it for the last year. My job is in the U.S. to support the efforts that we have in terms of fundraising and finding partners. And our organization works with 19,000 children and youth in 5 townships throughout the country. And our whole reason for being is helping the young kids that we work with all the way into young adulthood to become productive citizens of the future. And so we have community centers where they're able to get homework support, to assume leadership roles through sports and so on and so forth. And I'm proud to say that while we do serve both boys and girls, over 60% of our beneficiaries are girls. 70% of our staff, the majority of whom are from the townships we serve, are women. And of the 3 international offices we have, two of them are led by women, including myself. And so that's great. It's a great testament to how we operate as an organization and the fact that we're empowering women and girls to seek leadership. I will be going to Limpopo tomorrow. In fact, I forgot to mention that I'm here at the invitation of the U.S. Embassy South Africa, has had me here for the last couple of weeks speaking to different women's groups and learning from different women's groups around the issues that are important to us, around leadership, entrepreneurship. And so I'm going to be in Limpopo doing that with groups of women all the way through Thursday this week.
Well, Elizabeth, we thank you for the great work that you're doing here in South Africa.
Thank you so much.
Please continue to do so.
Thank you, and happy Women's Day month to you and your audience.
Same to you. All right.